Welcome back. Now we are going to look at our third measure of center, also known as the mode. The mode is the data value that occurs most frequently in the data set. A lot of people like to say the mode is the most. To link those two ideas together, they kind of sound alike, so that may help a little bit. We've got some important properties for the mode. The mode gets used with qualitative data as well. When we talked about median and mean, that was numerical data or quantitative data. The mode can be used with qualitative data, and that makes it a little bit different. Remember, qualitative data is labels or categories. So favorite colors, favorite foods, those types of things. Also, it is possible that your data set has no mode. It could have one mode, so one number or one category that occurs most often, or you could have multiple modes. If you survey our statistics class about favorite colors, we could have a tie between green and purple. Maybe 7 people each say that green is their favorite color and purple is their favorite color. So that would give us 2 modes. When that happens, we say our data set is bimodal. If perhaps we had more than 2 modes, we would call this multimodal or multimodal, depending on how you choose to say it. It means the same thing. That means that maybe 4 people in our statistics class chose, Charlie's Bistro as their favorite place on campus to eat. And maybe 4 people said they like to bring their lunch to campus. And 4 people said they want to go to the regular dining hall. So that would give us a multimodal situation. If we don't have any value that's repeated, so everybody has a completely different opinion about something, we can say that there's no mode, and that's totally valid. To go calculate mode, we can go and use StatCrunch again. I've already loaded my data. I'm going to go to Stat and click Summary Stats. Again, I entered my data in columns. I'm going to choose column 1. I don't care where it goes. I don't want to group it. And the only statistic I am interested in is down at the very bottom of my list. It may be different if you're using a laptop. So I'm going to check mode and compute. And that tells me that the mode for my data set is 72. We could go calculate that by hand. You could go and count. If you look at that data set, it's pretty clear that there are more 72s than anything else in there. So you have that as a backup method as well. If the data is not in order, I would definitely recommend StatCrunch. It'll save you some time. After the mode, we are going to look at our last measure of center. That is the mid-range. The mid-range is the average of the minimum value and the maximum value. For my formula, folks, that means we're going to add the min and the max. And divide it by 2. The mid-range, because it's only using the lowest value and the highest value, is absolutely not resistant. Calculating the mid-range is potentially relying on those outliers to get its value. So it is extremely sensitive to the value of those outliers. We're going to calculate the mid-range or the mid-range of Verizon data speeds just so you have an example. So that means we need to go find the minimum and the max. It looks like my smallest data value is 14.1 megabytes per second. It looks like my maximum data value will be 55.6 megabytes per second. So to calculate the mid-range, we add the min and the max. And divide by 2. That gives us a mid-range of 34.85 because we want to go 1 decimal past our data values, and that is megabytes per second. In the event that your distribution is bell-shaped, meaning it looks kind of like that. These guys, the mean, the median, and the mode are all going to be the same number, and that's super handy. One of the last things we're going to do is calculate the mean for a frequency distribution. You guys have calculated your own frequency distribution tables. This time, we've got the frequency distribution. We've got to look at the class midpoints in order to be able to calculate the mean for the frequency distribution. So, buckle your helmets, folks, because here we go. To calculate the mean from a frequency distribution, we are going to take each frequency, that's the F, and every class midpoint, that's the X. We're going to find that product, add them all up. So this is the sum of the things divided by Hold on. The sum of the frequencies. So here we go. Remember when we're looking at a frequency table, the frequency is the number of people who had to wait between 75 and 124 seconds for their food. That's way better. Okay. Class midpoint. The good news is we've only got to do that one time. To find the class midpoint, we're going to add the lower class limit and the upper class limit. So 75 plus 124, and we're going to find the middle, so we're going to divide by 2. That gives us a class midpoint of 99.5. I'm going to go ahead and find the rest of my class midpoints. Now I know you can, well, I should say you have 2 different ways to do it. You can keep going. You could do 125 plus 174 divided by 2. And you could calculate that all the way down. Or you could realize that this is 50. So if I add 50 more, I get 199.5 plus 50 more would be 249.5 plus 50 more would be 299.5, and save yourself a little bit of work. Now I'm going to go and calculate frequency times class midpoint. So I'm going to multiply 11 times the midpoint. I'll write it out for the first one. And I get 1,094.5. Then I'm going to multiply 24 times 149.5. And I get 3,588.0. If I continue with my multiplication, those are my results. If I add all of those guys up, and those guys, I mean everything in my last column, my sum is 8,025.0. So to calculate the mean frequency, we need to pull those 2 pieces. I need to pull that guy, my 8,025.0. And then the sum of my frequencies, that was 50. In case you missed it, the sum of my frequencies Came from right there. That gives me 160.5 seconds. Now, the big question is, could you do this using StatCrunch? Absolutely. That is going to look very different when you are able to copy and paste. So, try out the steps for using StatCrunch on your own. If you want to type in the table, you can absolutely type the table. You should just need the first two columns. But that may be something that we go over in person, using probably the computer and not my iPad. But we'll address that when we get there. The last thing we need to take a look at is calculating a weighted average or a weighted mean. A great example of using weighted means happens when your GPA gets calculated. Not everything counts the same. So if you get an A in a course, it counts heavier toward your GPA than other ones. So here is an example and the formula for our weighted mean. We're going to multiply each weight by its corresponding X value. Then we're going to add them all up. That's this top part up here. And then we're going to divide by the total of the weights. So it's a lot like that frequency distribution table we just did. But it won't be quite as involved. So here we go. We have a student who took 5 classes. They gave us her grades. And when GPA gets calculated, each grade is assigned a number of points. And those points are what we add up for your GPA. So here's how we're going to do it. We are going to use the number of credits, so these guys up here, as the W. So she got 3 in the first one, and then 4, and then 3 and a 3 and a 1. That's where those numbers are coming from. And then instead of using the A, the B, the C, the D, and the F, those don't mean a whole lot as far as our calculations go. We are going to substitute 4 for the A, 3 for the B, 2 for the C, 1 for the D, and 0 for the F. All of those will become our X values. So, to perform our calculation, and remember we're calculating an average, we need the sum of W times X over the sum of our W's. So here's what that looks like. I'm going to start with a big old fraction bar. I may not need it to be quite that big, but that's okay. When I do my first W times my first X, that's going to be those two guys. So I want 3 times 4. Remember, sigma means add. I did those a little bit backwards. No, I didn't. And then I'm going to do the 4 times 4. And then 3 times 3. And then 3 times 2. And then 1 times 0. And I changed my symbols halfway through, so I'm going to make them all match. Then I need to add up all my W's. My W values were all 3 and 4 and 3 and 3 and 1. So this is 12 plus 16 plus 9 plus 6 plus 0. In the denominator, I have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So the magic of our calculator. We end up with a GPA of 3.07. Now you might be thinking, Ms. Graham, in the last one, or we did an example where you said we have to round to one place past the data values. Wouldn't that just be one decimal place? Well, right down here, they tell you commonly we round grade point averages to 2 decimal places, so that's what we're going to use because it's appropriate for our problem. So that is a quick rundown of measures of center. And now that we've talked about them, we're going to talk about what happens when those things get affected by their outliers. But we'll save that for another day.